we are so excited to be welcoming back Elinor Lipman, who has already done a virtual conversation, but I believe this is her first virtual event with us, but she has been just about everywhere because she is among our two favorite authors, I should say. The new novel, Rachel to the Rescue, has been winning raves. It is a delightful paperback edition, and I just can't help but quote from Beck Dory Stein's review at the New York Times. Rachel to the Rescue revolves around one young woman navigating her way through a parade of spurned adults behaving badly. It's the universal story of growing up and learning what matters and who deserves our attention. I have no doubt that readers who are hungry for a heartwarming comedy and spicy DC gossip will find Lipman's novel absolutely delicious. I should note that Elinor Lipman is the author of 16 books of fiction and nonfiction. Her novels include Then She Found Me, The Inn at Lake Divine, Isabel's Bed, which, if you're paying attention, was the first book for which she visited Milwaukee, The View from Penthouse B, A Turpentine Lane, Good Riddance, and of course, Rachel to the Rescue. She's also the author of 2 nonfiction books, I Can't Complain and Tweet Land of Liberty, Irreverent Rhymes from the Political Circus. Then She Found Me became a 2008 feature film starring Helen Hunt with Bette Midler, Colin Firth, and Matthew Broderick. And she was the 2011-2012 Elizabeth Drew Professor of Creative Writing at Smith College, a finalist in the New York Times Nicholas Kristof Trump Poetry Contest, and the author of 2 modern love essays. And I just want to note that just as my out with me to keep me company during this event. We are so honored to have a very special, and as I said, one of our 2 favorite authors, Jane Hamilton, to be the conversation for this amazing program. And I would say all the wonderful books that Jane Hamilton has written, but I will put it in the addendum later because we're trying to keep this to an hour.
Name a couple. Name a couple.
Well, I can get them all off my shelf. That's in the H's. So you got it.
Thank you, Daniel.
I particularly love Short History of a Prince, but here's my hardcover of Map of the World.
First edition, I'm sure.
Here's my hardcover of Book of Ruth.
Oh my God.
And continues on. So I give you Elinor Lipman and Jane Hamilton. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm gonna start talking, Elinor, because I want to say that you've written 16 novels. Is that right?
No, actually, Rachel is my 13th novel.
Okay,
if you counted all the other books, it's I
okay.
think 16.
So Daniel listed your numerous accomplishments, but I just want to say that some of you won't know that Elinor was a roving guard in her high school basketball team in Lowell, Massachusetts, which I always think of now. I learned this in 2019, recently. I've known you for a long time, but when I learned that detail, it just blew my mind because you are a very dainty person.
Well, I'm almost 5'4". I lie about that, but roving guard. I was a guard. I wasn't, I didn't score that much.
I still think it's a pertinent detail just to put in the
I do. Oh, thank you.
But anyway, it's wonderful to see you, and it's wonderful to be here. And also, thank you for just as a Wisconsinite, thank you for your support of Boswell's for all these years. You've been an ardent supporter of the store, and they too we all have benefited from your coming here and delighting us in person, and now delighting us with this novel. And so I have a bunch of questions that I want to ask you. And just full disclosure to you, I've asked you this question before, but I think it's kind of pertinent with this book, especially because it's so clearly a political satire. But I also think it's your trademark romantic comedy too, tied up in that. And so I love what Nora Ephron said about romantic comedy. She says a romantic comedy comments on its time in an intelligent way with the intention to delight, which describes exactly what you do. And in 2019, you said you were on your tour, and I met you during your tour about the high school yearbook book, which I love. But you knew that you were writing a book about a person who worked in the Trump White House. So could you just tell us how, the book came to you, and did you think it was, you're going to be the form of romantic comedy which you have done so beautifully, or did you think you were going to depart at that point, or how did it all come together?
I didn't think I would depart. I don't outline, so I don't know where it's going and how it will end, except, generally there's a happy ending in those Lipman books. But I had, I'm politically obsessed, and although kind of taking a break now, but watch the news all the time, get up in the morning, start at 6 o'clock, Morning Joe. And I just knew that my character was going to work in the Trump White House and be fired. So my first bad idea was maybe just in some sort of kitchen job, but a kind of, maybe Melania's sort of personal chef or something like that. And I even ordered a copy of a White House chef's cookbook. And then I had this other idea that maybe she would have been tutor to the unnamed Baron, who you're not supposed to mention. I guess you can, maybe you can now. And but then one day, because I used to read Politico every morning, one morning I read that there was an actual office in the White House and it was, the nickname was WHORM, WHORM, which stands for White House Office of Records Management. And the sole job of this whole office was to tape back together everything that Trump ripped up. And he couldn't help himself. So it would be something would be just sometimes ripped down the middle, but sometimes it would be confetti. And it was, sort of the Scotch tape team, and it still exists.
It still exists with Joe Biden?
Does, and I got an email from the guy who's the head of it, who really liked my book, which seems miraculous. But also, so the minute I read that, I said, Eureka, this is it. She will have had that job, Scotch taping all day long, and then she gets fired. That was always my premise. I had no idea what she would do after that, but yeah.
So I just do want to ask, does Joe Biden rip up his memos too?
I believe not.
But
everything goes to the National Archives. So the reason you're not supposed to, and these are things like emails that are printed out or memos. It isn't just, what we might think of as important documents that he signs, but everything.
Wow. So I thought maybe you had invented that job.
No. No, I hadn't. It's still there. The first thing I asked it's a very convenient friend. He's the archivist of the United States. I knew him when he was a humble librarian in Massachusetts. And the first thing I did when the book was accepted and there were, maybe edits, is this office still exist? Yes.
Oh my goodness. I'm kind of stunned, speechless. But I think it's on page 2, you have this the book is so funny, and you are such a sharp observer of our culture and all these tiny little details. But I love this sentence about the mail that comes for the president. And you say, there was the positive, the negative, the love letters, the requests for pardons, for clemency, for commuted sentences, for loans, for business advice, for autographed photos, the macaroni paintings, the coffee mugs, the velour renditions of the president, the edibles. Okay, did you make all of that up? Especially the macaroni paintings?
I made it all up. I did make it up. What can I say? I'm sorry. I
No,
did.
I love that, but it made me LOL, honest to God. So, just to get back to the idea of the romantic comedy, which you've been writing for a long time, and I just want to say that Eleanor, um, oh, The Ladies' Man, that was maybe your fifth or sixth novel.
It was, if I count really quickly, I think fourth. I think In It Lake Divine was my In It Lake Divine was my fourth. Ladies' Man was my fifth.
Okay, so there's the best sex scene in the world in The Ladies' Man, which when I have to teach,
So,
and when I think about teaching a sex scene, I always start with that, and it is so funny, The Ladies' Man. But what I want to ask you in relation to this book, because you have a wonderful match for your heroine, and he's kind of in a such a low key way. He's an ideal man, and I just wondered if in 2021 it's a little bit hard to come up with who the ideal man now is.
oh, um, I my I generally, I can't help it. It must be the, I don't know, good influences in my life or something in my, functional family. But when, I when someone is going, I get the sense someone's walked on stage and is going to be the possibly romantic hero, then I can't help making them nice. And I've discovered an interesting thing. I discovered this with um, The Pursuit of Alice Thrift, where her roommate is a male nurse. He's in the pediatric NICU. She's a doctor, and I don't ever describe him as being handsome or good looking. I do mention that he's an adult now, that he had acne scarred face, but one of the only physical details, he's a little miniature koala bear hanging on his stethoscope. But readers and reviewers, and they did the same thing with Jeremy in Good Riddance, who wore braces, and with Alex in this book. And I describe, he's not, I describe him as even a little pudgy. People ascribe to these nice men good looks. And I find that interesting. Yeah.
I do. I think he's not somebody who you would say, oh my God, walking down the street, but once, if he was in a room at a small dinner party, you would think that is like a lovely man.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
but I also wonder, in the context of just what women need and want now, and if in your mind, the first book to now, that sort of has changed at all, or not.
I don't worry about things like, is it feminist enough? And I once had a phone conversation with someone who I just worshiped her writing, Carol Shields. And I reviewed The Republic of Love for the New York Times, and I'd never read it, and I'd never read her. And I just adored that book. It was the only time that I was assigned a review, and I asked if I could have more words, if I could make it longer. And it's just so touching, and it's about these people who've been through many marriages and they find each other. And we had this talk that a reviewer or a reader might say, oh, what do Lipman's books, do they all have to march down the aisle at the end? But Carol and I had this discussion about, let's say you were in a shrink's office, and what would you be talking about? You would be talking about your feelings and your need for love, maybe, and your need for, it's something to find love and happiness, and that's all right to write about that.
Yeah.
Carol had more articulate things to say than that, but it was just, we agreed that it was okay to give someone a happy ending.
Mm-hmm. You're so lucky you had that conversation with her. She was such a great person. I met her once, but and I just wonder young people still read her?
I fear not. And when she knew she was dying, she had a very advanced stage 4 breast cancer. And we talked, and I said, when people ask me who I'm reading, I will always start with you. And
Oh,
then I made the same promise. It's a tie to Anita Shreve, who is a mutual
oh,
friend. But she was a very, very close friend, and I just miss her terribly.
uh-huh. Well, that's a great promise. Okay, but back to your book. My question for that really was an urgent question as I read the book was, how in the world do you write about a living person, and especially the president and his family, and not worry about being, sued for libel?
Well, one of the first things I did was ask a friend of mine who is intellectual property lawyer. And
Mhm.
first of all, it's fiction. It's fiction. So I made it up.
Right.
He hasn't. I don't think he's read it yet, and hasn't sued me yet. And it wouldn't. I don't think it would be the worst thing. I
No,
know it'd get me on Morning Joe. I think. Yeah.
totally, totally.
Yeah.
Um, you,
And don't forget, he would have to be interviewed if we went to court. That's the way it would work, that they'd have to get him in there. So, yeah.
okay.
So, but I'm being facetious here. I just felt that, when someone is a public figure like that, then you can, look at, look at Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
I like to think that that's sort of the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I sometimes do wonder why they aren't. Well, they must have it. I mean, yeah, it's a mystery how they get away with their deliciousness. But you must have had so much fun dressing Melania for example.
I did. She doesn't appear that much.
But in New
But
York, can you
in
describe
New
what she was
York,
doing in New York?
yes, and I gave her a baseball cap that said Stonewall, because once Melania leaves the White House, then I had her do some things that were would upset Donald Trump.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I won't give it away, but you do imagine an act that Melania engages in that we all wished she would do for many years, but didn't do in real life,
Yes.
which
Yes.
must have been really deeply satisfying.
It was. It sure. Yeah. I know. I didn't ever worry. I just sort of left and right. I brought in a little Ivanka and a little Jared, and I mentioned anyone I felt like it, and Donald Trump left and right, and didn't worry about it.
So you
But
didn't worry about readers who might take umbrage at your politics.
I did, I did, but I also felt, what did I feel? Why was I not worried about that? I felt that that was a possibility. I got a letter from one person who lived in Canada, no less, and she'd read about my future book, just the way yeah, my future book that was going to be a little bit about Donald Trump. And she said she'd read all of my books, and that, but no, she wasn't going to read this one, and that was that. So I wrote her back, and I don't write everyone back if it's a rude letter. And I said, well, I hope you'll be back, and you'll just skip this one. And then she started writing me this little chummy, so we're friends now.
That's nice. That's
Yeah.
lovely. Wow. Um, so have you said a book in DC before?
No.
I didn't think so. So did you go down there and scout around? Because many of your novels are really, in a way, a love song to New York.
Yes. The truth is, I was finishing this book when I was isolating in a little bit up in, Hudson Valley. And I had plans to go to the sit around the wallpaper store in New York that I was imagining that her parents owned and take several days and go to New York. And I was even planning who could take me around. So I had to do it virtually and I didn't make it there. But one of the first emails I got was someone who lived in Washington and said, yikes, you got all the Washington details exactly right. So,
Oh, good.
I relaxed after that.
Bravo.
Because I had
That's
to figure
wonderful.
out the subway, where they lived, and the subways, the metros that they took in relationship to each other and getting places and work and Georgetown. And so that took a little work.
Mhm, mhm. I imagine that part of your fun is also the names that you give your characters. Um, like Shoshana Gottlieb, who's one of my favorite characters. Did you know that when did you know that Shoshana was going to be part of it?
Oh, okay. Um, I that was sort of a correction because I'd written, I knew I wanted that Rachel is sort of exposed in some way, or someone leaves a tip on a tip line and they think it's maybe Rachel left it. So who did it? So my first plan was that Ivanka Trump using a disguised voice, and it just didn't work out. So then I thought, well, because it was sort of a hint of maybe some anti-Semitism, manufactured anti-Semitism in the White House. So who better than Ivanka's Hebrew coach?
Exactly. Who better? Who
Right.
better than the Hebrew coach?
Right. I enjoyed her a lot because she turned out to be, as you know, she was kind of fast.
Yeah.
My drift.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Very fast.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love that you do in this book is several times you bring people together for dinner parties, and I think it's hard to do dinner scenes. Yeah, but you have a lot happening at the dinner table.
I do. I think if not to, it would be immodest to say somebody could do a thesis on the conversations at tables in my books, because like Alex and Rachel's first date, they go to a jazz club, but of course they eat and they order food, and the hamburgers are named after famous jazz singers. So yeah, I think that if I were, if I like climbed walls, whatever that's called, or skied, or
I mean, like rock climbing.
like rock climbing. Yeah, the one inside a gym I meant, though. That one.
Yeah.
That's a new
climbing walls.
Climbing walls. Thank you. That there would be more, what I cook and I eat and I do it people over. So that's kind of, feels very natural. Comes too easily. I have to push them out of the house.
Do you were you already a wine aficionado before you started this book? Did you have to do a great deal of research?
Oh, no. I don't consider myself a wine aficionado at all. I think I know enough that it was Alex works in a wine store, so there was the kosher section, and there was two kinds of vermouth, and a little prosecco, and a little like rosé. So I didn't do too much. My late husband was quite the enophile, and so I think I picked up some stuff.
I love that you gave Alex, a fairly modest profession. You didn't make him an orthodontist or a brain surgeon.
Right. I thought so too. I like I like that. I like I grew up in Lowell, Massachusetts. I did not grow up on, Park Avenue, and fine people work behind counters, I thought. And also, he's was probably kind of roped into the family business. It's his father's store, and that seemed, a logical thing.
And Rachel, your heroine comes from people who are in the business of helping people choose wallpaper and paint and the home decor field. And I love Rachel, and this is not Rachel's idea of the good life or even a profession that she could do even adequately well. And her idea of decor when people come in is like, you know what, choose anything because after you put the paint on, you're not even going to think about it.
Yeah, she would hand it over to her mother, who would, know the difference between, as I wrote a long sentence of, I took actual colors from Benjamin Moore, mayonnaise and marshmallow and ecru, and people were saying to me, just like you asked me about the tasks she did in correspondence, oh, that's so funny. Did you make them? Oh, must have made those up. Haha, marshmallow. And no, mayonnaise, no. They're right there. All from Benjamin Moore.
Well, we do love Benjamin Moore. Uh, just getting back to our former president, you wrote tweets from his point of view before you started this book.
In his voice, almost every
voice.
day. In his voice, the poetry of Donald Trump. Yeah.
Can you recite any of them?
Not. I would have to go get my phone and do that.
Okay. Well, they were really funny, and that must have
Thank
really
you.
been a pleasure.
Thank you. I do like to brag that if Daniel mentioned this, that I was a runner-up in the New York Times Donald Trump poetry contest. It was a thrill.
You are so talented. I can't believe it. I mean, I do believe it, but you also Tucker Carlson has like a couple pages.
Yeah, I do.
Has he phoned you up to?
No, haven't heard from any of the people I ridiculed. I didn't watch it, but I looked at transcripts of Tucker Carlson, and also Trump is at one of his worst moments when he is on there, so it just like goes off the rails. That was fun.
So there is a character, a writer in the book. I think he actually writes books.
Kirby Champion.
Yeah, that Rachel comes to work for, and he is as dopey as our president in a certain way, but harmless.
Yeah, I like doing him, and sometimes people have said, Rachel to the rescue. Who's Rachel? Who's being rescued? And I feel that in many ways she rescued Kirby, but she definitely rescued herself. But yes, Kirby writes, he's a muckraker, and he's a very lazy writer. His idea of a good time, of a good, some big clue, some big scoop is, just a housekeeper at the White House who talks about hairspray or Diet Coke or, nothing. And he just sort of lifts things from news items and stuff like that, but it was fun to do him too.
Yeah. Something I've wondered about is, and you mention it in the book, because Kirby has a source for some of the White House dirt from housekeepers, and it just seemed like there have got to be housekeepers. I'm sure that they're muzzled and they've signed many documents, but still there surely will be housekeepers that will come forward, don't you think?
I don't really think housekeepers, because you read these lovely testimonials by butlers, and they've been there since George H.W. Wait, is that right? George H.W. Bush, and they've served 5 or 6 presidents. So not housekeepers, not in terms of maybe, writing a memoir, probably not.
Maybe not a memoir, but just
come clean.
Calling up somebody like Rachel or anybody and just saying, you know what? They were such slobs.
Yeah, I hope so. Let's hope so.
So did you know people in the White House who sort of gave you glimmers? what was going on inside?
No, not really. I mean, I obsessively watched news during the Trump presidency.
Mhm.
So, um, every report from the White House, I was, there listening and reading just the New York Times every day. And I subscribed to the Washington Post. So, no, I mean, the closest thing was my friend. Oh, maybe I should. I've already outed him, but no, I thank him in the acknowledgments. David Ferriero, who's the archivist of the United States, to confirm. Yes, there really is this White House Office of Records Management, and yes, it's still going on, and that where it's located in the new executive office building, maybe the old one, I forget. It's in the book correctly.
Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Well, I'm going to just look at the chat here for just a second because I don't want to hog you. Um, this person says, I'm interested in character development. Was Rachel developed first and then the others, or do they all develop together? I mean, you already sort of said you had her situation, but in terms of how they all developed and came together.
Definitely all together. And what I do is if the characters if I'm introducing new characters and I'm developing them, and then I realize that there's a gap, that maybe I've jumped too quickly to Rachel's job and I should talk about her family or her education or jobs that came before. So I develop the character, but then I develop the story and the character at the same time.
Hmm, hmm. I'm just amazed that you don't. Do you know the ending? Because you say you don't have an outline and you don't really know what's going to happen. And you have suggested that there were some wrong turns and then you came
Yes.
back. But and I'm not going to give. I don't want to spoil anything. But there is a real life situation that allows you to sort of conclude it, which you wouldn't have known about when you started.
Oh, that's
Um,
great. I mean, I think you can say that. And this is sort of exemplary of how I write. That I'm, writing, and I'm up in sort of sheltering out of the city, and one day I'm just sort of skip a line. It was after either a dinner party in the novel, or I think it might have been a Seder or something. Didn't I have a couple of, at least one,
yes, you do.
at least one
Yes, you
Seder?
do.
And I turn the page, or no, I skip a few lines, and Rachel says, if I'd only known that that would be the last gathering of people, and I would have gone to New York, I would have done that. And I just did it, and I got there, and I felt that that was right.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Especially, I've got it in history with Donald Trump election approaching,
Uh-huh.
and but I was very happy with that.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Um, Daniel talked in his introduction about this genre called codger lit, which I was not aware of as a genre, codger lit. But
Um,
you continue to write about young people, which I think is impressive. And because their world is very different than we us codgers world in some ways.
yes, I think probably it's not unrelated to romantic comedy, not that people, older people, can't fall in love, and things like that can happen after they're widowed. They like, uh,
You do personally, and you might not want to go into it, but you have lived out the romantic comedy in your own life for sure. Not the comedy part so much, but definitely the romance part.
well, I did monetize it. I got a modern love essay out of it. So, yeah, yeah,
That's great.
thank
Do
you.
you
But the novel I'm writing now, my character it's getting up there. She's 39.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
She's in the geriatric pregnancy range.
Yeah. Oh, for
That,
sure.
that starts at 35, I think. Somebody comments that they love the coral color on your wall, by the way.
Oh, coral is exactly the color I described it to Daniel earlier before we started. It's wallpaper.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody sent one of your tweets. Shall I read it?
Sure.
I thought I owned that stupid court like caddies at a golf resort. Amy Neal and my guy Brett, sure things, sure votes, my safety net. At least I keep the GOP afraid of tweets, afraid of me. Judges 60, Rudy none. I fought the law, the damn law won.
Yeah, that was that was one of my last, I pretty much, yeah, that was probably one of my last ones. Thank you, whoever found that.
Well, Pamela Ross said that she misses your daily political poems. She says that you kept us sane in an era of insanity.
Oh, thank you, Pamela.
How do you come up with the names? I talked about how they were enjoyable, but any particular way? Kirby, Yasemin, etc. I also love the mix of just general names too, Alex and Rachel.
Oh, thank you. Sometimes they just pop into my head and I think I better go with that. I think I don't know if Rachel was the very first name I had, but it was within, a couple of chapters. I think I had another name first. I think I did, but not for long. And who knows where I got Kirby Champion? I remember looking in the room that I write. I remember looking at my bookshelf, and I think I saw the last name Champion, and then I wanted to give him, and it's a pen name. I don't even.
That's right. That's right.
I forget what his real name was. It was something less glamorous, but I thought, he's kind of, a horse ass who would, no offense to people out there named Kirby Champion, but, I wanted to give him a name like that. And Yasmin, that popped into my head. And then I have a friend, really an acquaintance, someone who works with Jonathan and very fond of her, and happened to be having dinner with her and said, how do you spell your Yasmin? And so I used the spelling of her name as a little wink to her.
You also, I can't remember if this is true of all your novels, but do your chapters always have titles?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love
yeah.
Towards a Better Blight is one of my favorite in this book, chapter headings.
Oh, thanks. I work at those. I don't just, oftentimes I've written the whole chapter and I go over a chapter probably 20 times and I send it on to two wonderful writers, Mamie Medwed and Stacy Schiff, who was my biographer, Pulitzer Prize winning biographer, who was my first editor when she was 25 at Viking. And so I don't want to send them something that's unfinished or rough. So I go over it and over it and over it till I can't polish it anymore. And then somewhere, toward the end, I pick a chapter title.
And is that while you're in the process of writing, or is that when you're finished the whole thing and then you go chapter by chapter to them? And
no, it's as I'm writing, and I send them, I work and polish, send it to them, and they're and I call them the good cop and the bad cop. Stacy used to do a little more line editing than she does now. Now she's gotten the idea that if I've rewritten it 20 times, literally 20 times, then she probably doesn't have to substitute her word for mine. But Mamie reads it and calls me right away, and she loves it. She always loves it. I know, it's the best coach. Yeah,
that's so wonderful. You're so lucky.
No,
that's great.
I can do that for you, Jane. Do you want to send me chapters?
I'd be too frightened. It would be, but thank you for the offer. I don't know if I could do it as before I have the whole thing, because in my experience, I really don't know what I've made until I've made it. And then I have to go back and fix.
Yeah, I have to do both because it's, each individual chapter, they might really like it, but they're not seeing the big picture. They're might be weeks apart. So
Mhm.
I'm the one that goes back and says, wait a minute, I threw that ball up in the air and, I lost it, or it's just,
Mhm.
what did I ever do? You need that for?
Mhm. I have a friend who's a genre writer, and I have total respect for, the police procedural, and she writes, a 400-page outline, and then she writes the book, and she's always like mystified why it takes me so long to write a book. Like, what is the problem? Or that I've had failures, they just didn't quite work out. And I love her mystification, but we have to invent, in a way, the form each time.
I started with my first two books. I went all the way to the end. For the first one, Then She Found Me, I'd never written a novel. So who knew whether this could be a novel, whether I could write one, whether anyone would publish it. So I just edged my way toward the finish line. And then I read it and I divided the pages into three piles, like the, no good ones, the ones that were good enough to keep, and the ones that were good enough that would work with revisions. And I did that again for The Way Men Act. And then I just decided that it was better to recognize as I'm writing what isn't working. Don't go down that alleyway, come back, throw that chapter out. So with Isabel's Bed is when I started doing it chapter by chapter, and sending them to maybe even Stacy.
Wow. Someone wants to know, Lillian wants to know, what is your typical writing day like, or working day like? Do you write religiously every day or in spurts?
I do write religiously, especially actually during COVID. I've been writing 7 days as opposed to 5 before in normal life. So I try to be at the laptop by 8. That feels like the right time for me. Besides, I'm up so early. Don't give me any credit for like an early start because I get up around 6. Um, so, and I aim for 500 words, but if that comes too quickly, then I start thinking, well, maybe I can stretch it out to 750. And then I might overlap and get 799 and think, well, if I have 799, I might as well go for 1,000.
Wow. So let's see. Your chapters are in this book are relatively short, but there are more than 1,000 words in a chapter, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, definitely. And I can, yeah, they are.
Um, let's see. Um, I have a question, which is, do you, because you've had a movie made of one of your books, and you've had a play made of.
I have. Yes, that was just for the In It Like Divine. That was it's just, it all happened in a matter of months that this woman wrote to me named Jake Lipman, no relation, spelled the same way. Her name is really Jake. And she had been reading the In It Like Divine since she was a kid. And she wrote a wonderful play, and before I knew it, and it was cast, and because it was she got, what is it, it's, I forget what it's called, what the union is called with playwrights, someone will probably know and can tell me, but anyway, it could be like 16 performances or something like.
Oh, you mean like equity?
Yeah, thank you. Equity gives you permission to do this kind of off Broadway thing. And it was really fun. And I myself, sometimes people think, well, the author might be too sentimental about the own work. They, maybe they can't write the screenplay or they can't do the play. But I thought that she was so attached to the novel that she could cut some of it. So I got to slash it a bit for any future performance, if anybody wants to do it in their church or a synagogue or mosque, then it's like, sure, give us a call.
Yeah, call Eleanor's people. Do you, because you've seen your work on the screen, or even maybe before that happened, you did this, but do you cast the movie?
No, no, I didn't mean to yell at you. No, people, I can tell you why I don't. And it's because of all these novels written, it's so pie in the sky. I think that when I first heard that Then She Found Me was optioned, I didn't even know the book was being distributed and sent out to movie people. I mean, I knew I had seen Mary Poppins. I knew that I had seen The Godfather. I knew that novels get turned into movies. But I suddenly got this call one day that Sigourney Weaver loved my book and wanted to make it a movie. Then it moved on to Helen Hunt, which turned out to be great. But it seems like a total waste of my mental energy. And I don't have those. Yeah, so no.
Okay, all right. Well, can I tell you who I would cast?
Yes, but I would love that.
I really just love with all my heart, but not in a cougar way, mostly. Johnny Flynn, the British actor who played Mr. Knightley in the most recent rendition of Emma, and has been, and he would be good. He's very sort of unassuming, and he would do it, and he sort of lowers his head in just a very beguiling way, and he would be great.
Then if this ever got optioned and cast, then this is what I would weigh in on, because they love to know and they really care about what the novelist wants to do to a movie, as you know, number one consultant.
And you wouldn't, I mean, Donald Trump wouldn't have to be cast because there could just be news clips of him. Right.
They could cast him.
Well, I mean, Alec Baldwin, I'm sure, would love to reprise his role.
Right. Yes, I hope people knew I was being facetious about, there's the jokes about, the nobody is that interested in what the novelist has to say about the adaptation. Helen Hunt was very, very nice, and I got to participate a little bit about Then She Found Me.
And you got to meet Colin Firth.
No, the only one I didn't meet, I met Bette Midler for second, and they said, this is the person who wrote the book. And she said, "Ooh, great earrings."
When you're writing, speaking of my laughing out loud at many things you have said and in your book, are you laughing out loud? Because
no,
the lines are so funny, Elinor.
No.
Do you read them to your beloved Jonathan when there's a particularly good line?
No.
No.
He reads it eventually. He's read Rachel to the Rescue 3 times.
What a guy.
Nice, when it was a finished book. I don't. One thing I discovered along the way, and how are we doing? One thing I discovered is that lines that make people laugh out loud are things that I just think are like a little maybe poignant, or just I don't know, maybe well observed or something like that. And I once was doing a reading, and it was at a conference it was in Colorado, and it was like a huge audience, not because of me, it was like a whole conference.
Was that where we met?
No, that was Tattered Cover.
Okay.
Sorry.
Didn't mean to interrupt you.
Okay, and I was reading from Isabel's Bed, and I was reading this line where Harriet is just relaxing in the chair, and the hairdresser says that this hairbrush this week only was on sale. And the whole audience laughed. So I stopped and I said, "No, why is that funny?" And some nice person in the audience said, "Oh, it's just a laugh of recognition." And I think that that's, what a comedy of manners is all about. So when I do a reading and people laugh at lines that I just wrote, thinking, well, that's a nice line, So I've learned that what I remember something from The Dearly Departed, where the second moment I discovered this, where I thought it was a poignant line that characterized someone, and Mamie called and said, "Oh, that was the funniest line I ever read." So I said, yes, I started to catch on.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, it's sort of like my taking great pleasure in the president being sent macaroni art. And when I read that sentence, you received it in a solemn way, and I in my thought bubble was, Eleanor, this is funny. Wait, why aren't you laughing at your own line? This is
But
really
didn't both of your children do macaroni art?
I don't think we ever did macaroni art, even
Oh,
yeah.
oh,
But I mean, I know what it is.
yeah.
So, so can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on now? You said you were working
Um,
on something.
it's a novel. It might be my first novel that's sort of high concept, because there's the narrator. There are almost always narrators, first person. She's on house arrest, and she's confined to her apartment building in Midtown New York that quite resembles the location of my own apartment building. And there turns out to be, thanks to the observant eye of the doorman, someone else in the building with an ankle monitor.
Whoa.
And
Maybe it's Melania and Trump.
I'm done with them. Done with those bums.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, our time is almost up, but that sounds really interesting, and we'll all wait for it.
It
And
has a title.
what is it?
It's Ms. It's Misdemeanor. MS, misdemeanor.
How far into it are you?
213 pages.
I see.
That's
Okay.
today. Yeah.
How many words is that?
Oh, it's probably something like 60,000.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Maybe, I think. No, I forget. Yeah. No, that's not that many.
Maybe 40. Maybe 40.
Yeah, I think that's more like 48,000.
But you're pretty far along.
I get 200. Yeah, since all of my books are 323 pages, I think.
Okay, so one last question is what shall we read besides Carol Shields? I love Larry's Party myself, and Nina
Oh,
Shreve.
oh, I just blurbed and loved a book by Marion Thurm called A Blackmailer's Guide to Love. And I love that. And I just blurbed a first novel, which the title is a little up for grabs, but it's by Caroline Frost. And it is not my usual thing. It's about someone who is nearly kidnapped. She's a foster child, and, takes up with a bad guy. And then when she, has a new life, he gets out of prison and returns. But it's so masterfully written. It's her first novel. So, so it's William Morrow is doing it, and I wish I had the title, and I'm forgetting. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and I'm looking forward to. I want to read the one about the woman, the Miami Herald reporter, who wrote about Jeffrey Epstein's case, and how she opened that back up. But yeah.
Well, in the meantime, everybody will be reading Rachel to the Rescue. Thanks for writing another book, Eleanor, and thanks to Daniel for having us, and thanks to all of you for being here.
Yes.
And there's various interesting things in the chat, like information. There's something about Mamiv, which you can go and see later. But
it's a link to the event that we had for Mimi for Minus Me that right. Eleanor did the conversation for.
Okay.
People can watch it.
That's Minus Me is her latest book.
Minus Me. Yeah. What did I say?
Ooh. Yeah. I was just, repeating it.
Anyway, thank you, Eleanor, and I can't wait to see you all in person.
Jane, I thank you. I would love to do this with you every time.
Me too.
I will see
What
you in
author would?
Milwaukee. I will see you in Milwaukee.
Okay,
I
good.
do. I love Milwaukee. I think it's, I just think that, I stand on at the art museum. I remember the first time when the art museum first opened, and I remember I called my husband and said, if I just got plop down here in this beautiful spot and try to guess where I was, I would say Sydney. I must be in Sydney, Australia. It's so beautiful.
And they say, oh, we wish we were in Milwaukee. They say that in Sydney, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Daniel. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you both. What an amazing evening. What an amazing book. And looking forward to the next. And I also, your recommendations, there's also links to that. The book, this looks like the other book was called Shadows of Pecan Holler. Is that Carolyn Frost?
It is, I think the title
Might change.
The title might change, but that's
It
the one.
It doesn't come out till February of 2022. So people would be quite ahead of the curve.
Yes. I was flabbergasted at that book. So anyway, okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.